The galaxy burned. Alien fleets retreated. Cities crumbled. But this wasn't a story of defeat. It was the beginning of fear dying. Every species had bowed to power. Every species, except one. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the smartest. But they were the only ones who refused to kneel. They were human. And they changed everything. For thousands of years, the galaxy was ruled by civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity. These alien empires valued one thing above all else: survival. Wars were rare, not because peace reigned, but because fear ruled. The moment conflict threatened to tip into danger, entire species would surrender. Even the strongest of them would bow their heads before a shot was ever fired. No one questioned it. This was the way things had always been. Treaties were signed out of fear. Alliances were made not to fight, but to avoid fighting. Courage was a concept whispered in stories, not seen in action. No species dared resist when threatened. They didn't lack weapons. They lacked will. Then, humans arrived. Primitive, disorganized, emotionally unstable. That's what the Galactic Council thought of them. They were barely spacefaring. Their technology was outdated. Their systems were unremarkable. In the grand design of the galaxy, humans were irrelevant. But the galaxy was wrong. Because humans carried something no other species had dared hold on to: defiance. And it all began on a small mining outpost, where the universe first saw what humanity was truly capable of. The mining outpost was unimportant. Just another speck in the galaxy, worked by a few dozen human laborers digging minerals that barely made headlines. No one cared about it. Until the Zarkathi Empire arrived. They sent a cruiser, expecting the usual. A quick surrender. Minimal resistance. Another easy acquisition for their ever-growing control. They gave the humans 6 hours to evacuate and submit. The humans didn't run. They didn't beg. They sent a message. Come take it. At first, the Zarkathi laughed. No species had ever refused them. Not the Drelk, not the Kothuan, not even the towering Virexi. But humans were different. They didn't bluff. They prepared. While the aliens watched from orbit, the humans wired the mining tunnels with explosives. They welded together weapons from scrap. They turned forklifts into armored rams. When the Zarkathi landed troops, they expected fear. They found fury. The southern ridge erupted, swallowing dozens of soldiers in fire and smoke. The survivors were greeted by a storm of bullets, shrapnel, and firebombs. There were no tactics, no formations, just chaos, courage, and a refusal to kneel. The Zarkathi panicked. Their commanders screamed. Their troops fell back. And for the first time in their empire's history, they retreated. That day echoed across the stars. The message was clear. Humans weren't like the others. They didn't fear death. They made death fear them. Word of the outpost spread faster than light. At first, many thought it was a mistake. A lie. Propaganda. Maybe. The Zarkathi didn't retreat. It wasn't in their nature. But the wreckage of their troops told the truth. And that truth shook the foundations of a galaxy built on fear. Across the stars, species that had long been silent began to whisper. Who were these humans? Why didn't they run? Why weren't they afraid? The Zarkathi called for a full assault, demanding retribution. But their generals hesitated. They studied human psychology, trying to make sense of the madness. What they found disturbed them. Humans didn't just resist. They believed in something no other species truly embraced: dying for a cause. The concept was ancient, obsolete. Other species had evolved beyond such emotion. But humans carried it like a torch in the dark. Pride, honor, sacrifice. Small groups of humans, outnumbered and underarmed, began pushing back on other fronts. They didn't wait to be attacked. They struck first. Quick raids. Disruptive sabotage. Reckless, unpredictable, effective. One Zarkathi commander described it in a broadcast. They fight as if death is a friend, not an enemy. The council grew uneasy. The very idea of resistance was spreading. Not just among humans, but among others. Races that had cowered for generations began to wonder, what if they didn't? And in the middle of it all, humanity stood alone, bloodied, battered, outmatched, but still unbroken. The war was no longer just between the Zarkathi and the humans. It had become something greater, something deeper, a clash of beliefs. The old way, built on submission and fear, was being challenged by a single species that refused to bend. Human forces, though scattered and technologically behind, began coordinating with terrifying efficiency. They didn't just defend, they adapted. Every loss became a lesson, every retreat a setup. And then they did the unthinkable. They found it on a dead world, an ancient AI buried beneath the ruins of a long-extinct race. The others had feared it, sealed it away, left it untouched for centuries. But not the humans. They reactivated it. Warnings were issued, councils condemned the action. But humans didn't ask for permission. They asked what it could do. And when the AI asked why it should help them, the human commander gave one answer: because we won't stop. The AI scanned their history, their wars, their tragedies, their defiance, and then it made a decision. It chose to fight with them. Suddenly, the battlefield changed. Human fleets, guided by predictive algorithms, began striking at strategic points with terrifying accuracy. Their outdated ships moved like ghosts. Their ground tactics, enhanced by AI coordination, became near impossible to counter. The Zarkathi lost a capital ship in a battle they were certain they would win. Human casualties were massive, but their spirit didn't crack. One soldier, wounded and out of ammo, charged a dropship with nothing but a flare and a grenade, and took it down. That moment was broadcast across dozens of systems. The message wasn't just tactical. It was psychological. Humanity would not be ruled, even if it meant extinction. The galaxy was changing, not slowly, but violently. What began as a minor rebellion had become a wildfire, spreading from system to system. Species that had once sworn never to raise a weapon were now smuggling arms. Underground networks whispered human names like legends. They didn't just admire humanity. They envied them. And for the first time in centuries, they began to hope. But with hope came consequences. The Zarkathi Empire, once unshakable, was fracturing. Factions blamed each other for the losses. Generals argued. Governors rebelled. And all the while, humanity kept pushing forward. They weren't building an empire. They weren't trying to conquer. They were doing something more dangerous. They were inspiring. One world, Tarnis IV, refused to pay tribute to the Zarkathi. When a dreadnought arrived to punish them, the people refused to kneel. Not because they had weapons, but because a single human stood with them. That dreadnought never made it back. Reports claimed the ship was lost in a gravitational anomaly. Others said the crew mutinied after hearing human broadcasts. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was this: fear had shifted. For the first time in recorded history, the dominant emotion across the stars wasn't fear of the powerful. It was fear of staying silent. And still, humans kept fighting. They buried their dead. They patched their wounds. They pushed forward, not for revenge, not for glory, but because they believed something no one else had dared to believe in a long, long time: that freedom was worth dying for. The final battle wasn't meant to be a battle at all. The Zarkathi Empire had assembled a fleet so vast, it blocked out the stars above the Terran border. Thousands of ships, elite commanders, war machines built to end civilizations. Their message was clear: this ends today. The humans had no illusions. They were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded, but they showed up anyway. Old ships patched together with stolen tech and human stubbornness. Soldiers with scavenged armor. Pilots who had never known peace. And yet, not one of them hesitated. As the enemy closed in, humanity didn't wait. They charged. The sky became fire. Space itself screamed with missiles and plasma. Human ships rammed into cruisers, detonating themselves to break the lines. Ground teams boarded enemy vessels in zero-gravity combat, fighting hand-to-hand with nothing left but rage. A single human broadcast cut through the static, reaching every ship, every world. We are not afraid. If we fall standing. That sentence became a rallying cry. Then something impossible happened. Ships from other species, Varexi, Drulk, even the timid Cthulhu, joined the fight. One by one, they turned their cannons on the Zarkathi, not because they believed they could win, but because humanity had taught them how to stand. The tide turned. The empire that ruled through fear was brought to its knees, not by superior firepower, but by the courage it never understood. When the last Zarkathi ship fell, silence returned to the stars. But it wasn't the silence of submission. It was the silence of something reborn. From that day forward, the galaxy remembered one truth. Strength doesn't come from numbers, or weapons, or technology. It comes from the will to fight when no one else will. And in the darkest hour of the universe, only humans stood tall.